Session 3. How to Win the Digital Revolution. As we have seen, the Media 3.0 era has revolutionized the way audiences gather and interact with the news. Our world and the various people, communities, and cultures in it more connected than ever. But the benefits of communications technologies and the internet are not equally distributed. Internet penetration rates in many parts of our world fall well below 20%. Unique regional, social, and technical challenges arise as we adapt to new technologies and bridge the digital divide. Collaboration between broadcasters and drivers of innovation is the key. How do we achieve security and liberty? How do we protect confidentiality and transparency? And how do we encourage free expression and civility? Session 3. How to Win the Digital Revolution.
Distinguished guests, thank you very much. The topic of this discussion is how to win the digital revolution. I have a small definition how to win it, and think is to think big and start small, but act now. It's something perhaps we discussed last night. Perhaps the thing that Mark could tell us more about his plan, about his outfit. But on the outset, I'd like to introduce Thai PBS because, as I mentioned before, we are very young. We're only 5 years old, and perhaps the newest national broadcaster in Asia. Thai PBS was set up in 2008 as the first public broadcaster in the midst during the political violence in Thailand. So there are a lot of political connotation to the setting up of Thai PBS. And like all the public broadcasting service, Thai PBS put as much as its main objective to serve the interests of the public. We try to produce high quality programs, particularly in terms of content values and presentation, and above all, editorial independence. We adhere to accuracy, impartiality, and try to increase awareness and clear understanding of the people about the issues that concern to them. When we talk about digital revolution, we talk about people participation. Media 3.0 is about people participation. At Thai PBS, we got two main things. One thing is we try to create what we call the audience council, where these people would feedback and share their experience on the content of Thai PBS. But the other thing that now is growing and very important as the media organization now we're talking about, we train citizen journalists up and down the country. At the end of last year, Thai PBS has got about more than 2,000 citizen journalists who, not all of them, now supply or contribute to the Thai PBS news content, but at least about 1/3 of them now regularly file story from their communities, the issue that concern them, and the problem around their community. You may ask me, what about the rest? The other people who are not filing stories for Thai PBS, they are now working actively on their own community media, probably radio, community radio, or their own website. But they all benefit from the training Thai PBS provide to them. We train them how to use camera, how to use microphone, and how to tell the story the best they can. This is the basic technique of a journalist. But when they start their own storytelling, they tell the story from their heart, not from the perspective of a professional journalist who come from outside their community. So this marks the difference between professional journalists and citizen journalists for Thai PBS. Now, media organizations around the world now moving towards digitalization, and many countries have already completed that transition. But Thai PBS now has been in the midst of digital transition. But during the past 2 years, we have been preparing for this. Thai PBS is the first digital HD TV, high definition TV in Thailand on terrestrial platform. We have been doing this for the last 2 years. And perhaps in the next 2 years, we'll be on the terrestrial platform too. The Thai National Broadcasting Commission, what we call NBTC, is now allocating digital channel to many countries, many prospect channel provider. And Thai PBS now secure 2 digital channels for Thai PBS. And then we are going to start Thai PBS 2 in the next 2 years, which now we have to position Thai PBS 1 and Thai PBS 2 to a more direct to the audience expectation. Under these circumstances, Thai PBS has to prepare to face new challenges and serious competition, because by the end of in the next 2 years, there will be 48 free terrestrial channels. At the moment, in Thailand, we have about 6 free TV terrestrial channels. So in the next 2 years, we have more competitors. That's why we have to prepare ourselves to these challenges. And we have to train our manpower to maximize of the manpower and carefully manage them how to work on multi-channel. Train them how to produce content on many platforms. And state-of-the-art technologies. We deploy the best digital HD television from the very beginning, because we are new organization, so we in the position to procure the best and the latest technology. We all know now that many people today, all the audience, that they are watching, or now the new term is accessing programs from different devices, and that are convenient to them, that fit their own lifestyle. So we need to ensure that people or our audience always stay connected to us, and they must be able to view us wherever they are, whenever they want, and through whatever application they use. So our journalists have to clearly understand the concept that their work must contribute to the achievement of this policy. This, by no means, an easy task for the management. I have to admit that there are still broadcaster journalists TV broadcaster who believe just the values of TV news report only and prefer to appear on TV screen rather than producing a multimedia content online and on other platforms. Thai PBS experienced this kind of mindset when we start the web TV. We pilot the web TV last year. That's when we have a problem of some try to turn the mindset of the existing staff. Although the hypertext or Twitter and the rest of it may not totally replace the conventional broadcast today, as many people argue, it is an important and additional choices that show signs to take away more and more viewers away from the TV screen, particularly those Generation Me or the Y Gen in the era of the media 3.0 and beyond. Allow me to put a little bit of propaganda for Thai PBS. At the moment, Thai PBS Twitter is number one among the all news provider in Thailand. And we are number three, we are top three among all TV stations in Thailand. So this is much of our work, try to turn an analog broadcaster into a digital broadcaster. So let again say, when we want to win the digital revolution, we think big, we start small, and we have to act now. If you act late, it's too late because the technology will not wait. Thank you very much.
Thank you, João. Sorry. As you can see, I'm not a journalist. This is why I'm not used with this kind of equipment. But as a coordinator, I work very closely with journalists. And let me tell you how happy I am to share with you this very important forum. And this is an opportunity for me to give a view about an experience very special, because when I was invited to take part in this meeting, with regard to the theme and the subject to be conducted, I guess that everybody would be focusing on their own experience, and most of speakers come either from TV organizations or are news agencies or news producers. The fact is that I'm coming from a union, which means that we are not a TV station, we are not a news agency, but I wanted you to share with me an experience which is conducted by a union, which means that a series of TV organizations, and a union, as you well know, must take into consideration, into account, the different conflicts, different point of views, different positions, and act towards common goals, which are mainly serving the interest of the union, actually in the field of news exchange. Of course, Arab region is or has been the theater of many tensions. Everybody is focusing on Arab Spring, but this historical place of the world has been the place of tension before Arab Springs. During these speeches this morning, I noted that Palestine issue was not more part of concern or interest, because just one or two words have been said talking about Gaza situation, for instance. But well, Palestine issue added to Arab Spring have made the Arab region be the concern politically and security speaking from main media internationally or Arab media TV organizations. So as a result, the information leaders in the Arab world have been also aware about this situation, and as a result of this, mainly after Gulf War II, we noted the birth of many TV stations. The technology was also a positive element in favor of the creation of such TV channels. In a very short period of time, hundreds of TV channels came on the air. In addition to that, the concern was also from outside or non-Arab countries. We also noted that many countries, such as Russia, France, and others, were giving more importance on the situation prevailing in the Arab world, and thus we noted the creation of such TV organizations talking in Arabic and addressing the Arabic audience. Just cite BBC Arabic, France 24, Russia Today, and so on. Let me give you some figures to have a clear idea on what was the exchange philosophy in ASBU before 1220. Before this year, ASBU was exchanging 2/3 of the global average items were political items. It means that most of TV organizations were aiming at offering the official voice, the official message to the exchanges. Point two, in that year, 15% of items were dealing with security. That goes without saying that starting from December 2010, with the first Arab uprising in Tunisia, things have been changing very increasingly, and TV organizations were compelled to give the importance of the security items. And then it was something new in the ASBU exchanges, because we have been used to only have official message items. And that year, 2012, we had 750 flash items, which means that the situation was asking or recommending us to have coverage of news as soon as they are available, at least immediately or at most immediately after the event occurs. ASBU has been using this special position to provide the EBU, which is one of the most important partner with Asia Vision, with ASBU. So we've been offering more than 400 news items with the high standards required. Meanwhile, ASBU was the provider and the sole provider of main political and official news coming from Syria, from Yemen, from Egypt, Libya, Bahrain, also Palestine. When talking about Palestine, let me just stress one point. ASBU is working actually with a special network, very secured, multimedia network, But Palestine has never been able to join this network because of restrictions the Israeli authorities have decided, and they never permit the station dedicated to Palestinian TV to be used to give the chance to our Palestinian colleagues to take part in this exchange. But fortunately, the FTP, which is a new technology, as everyone knows, has come to our rescourse, and now Palestinian TV is able to take part in our exchanges through the FTP system. ASBU has the exclusivity for the coverage of the main major political events hosted within the area, like the Arab Summit meeting and the leaders' speeches and Arab League activities and so on. ASBU also includes, in addition to its member states, which are 22 members, includes also more than 20 participating and associate members. Among them, we can cite Al Jazeera, MBC Al Arabiya, and so on. The ASBU exchange system evolved since the first start in 1987, and I just wanted you to see this figure for the last 7 years, how number of items have been increasing, stressing upon the year 2010, which witnessed the implementation of the new system I have just talked about, which is MENOS. So MENOS was an opportunity to give chance to so many countries to take part in the exchange, whereas the classical way of contributing was either technically difficult or impossible for financial reasons. Of course, after the legal procedures, we were able to start organizing or holding 3 news packages a day, and we are also conducting 2 weekly sports packages, 1 weekly cultural package, 1 economic package, and regular and occasional variety of programs. It means that the occasion is given to all contributors to give their news items, taking into account the difference of time between the Gulf regions and the North African regions. As I said, in 1997, we proceeded to a new philosophy, which is working as a union and take profit as a union to make available coverage of major political events. And we, on this occasion, we have partnership with the ASBU, with the UN General Assembly TV, or African Union Broadcasting. In 2010, the need for further coverage was obvious by ASBU, and we started covering events outside, or some events outside the Arab region, and we were especially focusing on Arab activity in such events. Of course, during the UN General Assembly, every leader every country can have the live transmission of his leader's speech through the UN TV. But side stories, activities of the leaders are never covered. So we go on the side with a small team and have these events available for those who request this. Now, of course, there are many elements that that pushes us to think about a new approach within all this changing world, technically speaking and politically speaking. As long as 70% of news items were political news, we saw that it cannot, these politics cannot be followed at the same average. So, in addition to that, ASBU contributors were not very aware about offering items as soon as they are available. Everybody is concerned by its own news bulletin, and then afterward, the item is put at the exchange disposal. We had the chance of implementing a very extraordinary system of news exchange called MINOS, which stands for Multimedia Exchange Network over Satellite. And this gave the opportunity for some countries such as Djibouti, Mauritania, also Iraq, who couldn't have the possibility to join the system, and then they become able to join the system and exchange and contribute with news items. One of the main contributors today is Iraq, whereas 2 or 3 years ago, Iraq wasn't able to give a single item. What's the way we have to proceed to achieve these new goals? I mean, ASBU has its news exchange center based in Algiers and has 4 TV coordinators. Upon request of the legal authorities, central coordinators have been given the full authority to decide, to pick up, to look for, to accept, to refuse any news items. In a word, they have the editorial authority to animate the exchange. It was one of the biggest decisions made by legal authorities. I think I'll be happy to answer any questions related to the experience of ASBU.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation. Round of applause.
Hello. I'd first like to thank KBS and the ABU for inviting me to be here and to be part of this great panel today, and also for being important partners to the AP over many years. As the Asia Pacific News Director for AP, I manage an incredibly talented and incredibly diverse group of journalists who get to cover what I'm sure we all in this room agree is the most dynamic part of the world. Every day they're producing video, photos, text, and interactive content from across the region, including both South and North Korea. And I really believe that my job is one of the best jobs in all of journalism. I also believe that this is one of the greatest times in history to be a journalist. But of course, it's also one of the most challenging times to be a journalist. On the one hand, there have never been more platforms on which to access information than there are right now. There's never been a bigger potential audience for the work that we do. And it's never been so easy to reach billions of people in an instant and to engage with your audience in new ways that are totally interesting and unique. But on the other hand, there are more voices providing that information than ever before. literally everyone with a smartphone and a Twitter account. And that old revenue model that sustained traditional media is gone, and it is not coming back. But still, the fact remains that right now you can access information and images instantaneously from within this room, which a bunch of you are at this moment, on your phone from an almost infinite number of sources, almost anywhere in the world. And I think this is what we're referring to for purposes of this panel as the digital revolution. And I'm not sure that I can stand up here and tell you this is how you win the digital revolution. But I think I can definitely say that, at least for the AP, there is no one answer to that question. There are a lot of answers to that question. And I'm going to talk a little bit now about some of the things that the AP is doing that have amounted to really significant change in our organization, and that's ongoing, and it probably is ongoing for the infinite future, because that's the nature of what we do. Where's the thing? We've really broken the mold of the way that we tell stories. We're now telling stories in more ways than ever before. Everything from short, mobile-friendly bites of news to vid graphics, photo galleries, animations, data visualization, a lot of the things that a lot of your news organizations are doing also. And one of the reasons we're doing this is that it's just not the same thing to be first on breaking news the way it has been in the past. It means something completely different now than it did even a few years ago. In fact, one could argue that it's not really even possible to truly be first on a breaking news event. But to me, that does not mean the scoop is dead. It just means we have to be a lot more creative and a lot more innovative. We focus a lot of our time and energy in the AP on creating our own breaking news through our enterprising and investigative reporting. We also try to add expertise, context, analysis that you can't get anywhere else. We can cut through the clutter and we can tell our audience what they really need to know and what it means and why it matters. And in the AP, we refer to this as being distinctive. Success in our world is increasingly determined not only on being first, but also being on first to tell people what it means, why it matters, and to add that kind of value to the story. We are also, like many of you, using a lot more user-generated content, both through our relationship with Bambuser and also on our own. But we're going to great lengths to verify the authenticity of this content. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. AP has also gone big into mobile. AP's news app for smartphones and tablets, which hopefully some or all of you have on your devices, was among the first and is still one of the most popular news apps in the world. We've had more than 12 million downloads so far. We do a lot of live video from around the world, including events from the Paris Fashion Week to the ASEAN Defense Ministers meeting. We have dozens of live view video units positioned around the world so that our video journalists can transmit live HD video from the scene of a breaking news event onto screens all around the world. And to access that and more, we've recently developed what you see on the screen here, a new platform called AP Video Hub. This allows websites and app developers to easily download and embed a huge quantity of broadcast quality video every day. So these are some of the ways in which we're changing to adapt to the realities of the business today, and some of the same ways that your news organizations are changing. But I also want to talk about what's not changing at the AP, which is the core values of our journalism. And I think listening to all the speakers over the course of the day, this is really a theme that's resonated throughout the day, is that this is something that's really important for all of us to protect, and is a key part of the answer on how to win the digital revolution, is to not change too much. At the AP, we're strongly reaffirming our belief that accurate, fairly reported, and timely facts have never been more valuable. This is why what real journalists still do around the world every day remains essentially important. And I'm going to show a few examples of recent cases that I think illuminate that. So some of you might remember this one. This is from last February, when a single Weibo post from a single Chinese user set the social media world on fire with these words: Kim Jong-un, this morning, Beijing time 2:45 a.m., had his residence broken into and was assassinated by unidentified people. It was accompanied by this kind of weird, grainy photo that you see on the screen, which allegedly shows cars parked outside the North Korean embassy in Beijing, which is where the attack supposedly took place. This was reposted tens of thousands of times. Then it jumped over to Twitter, and it was retweeted over and over and over again. I have to say, even some very well-known news organizations started picking up on the rumors. But my colleague, Raf Wober, who spends a lot of time in Pyongyang, happened to be there at the time, and he saw no indications that anything was amiss. Nor were there any reports in South Korean media citing sources other than this tweet. If you traced every report back, it led you to this tweet. And most importantly, our own sources in the South Korean government were really skeptical of this report. So, of course, it wasn't true. Kim Jong-un is alive and well, and this is a photograph taken by AP photographer Mei Wong last month in Pyongyang. But for a few hours that day, there were millions of people around the world who believed that he was dead. As established, quote-unquote, old media organizations, the most valuable asset that we have is our name. That's what we're protecting by not jumping on the bandwagon onto stories like that. There's a reason why people believe the New York Times over some 14-year-old kid who's sending tweets from his bedroom. The Times has a long history of reporting important information accurately, which is why they're the New York Times, and it's why they have 9 million followers on Twitter, which is many times larger than their print circulation. So somewhat counterintuitively, I want to use this fake tweet to prove this point. The AP has about 2 million followers on Twitter, and in April of this year, a group called the Syrian Electronic Army, which you may have heard of before, seized control of the AP's Twitter account and sent this tweet, which very much looked like it came from the AP's flagship Twitter account. And you can all read it, but it says, 2 explosions in the White House and Barack Obama is injured. The next thing that happened is that the Dow Jones Industrial Average went like that. It went down 150 points in just a couple minutes, and you can see that clearly on the chart. The price of crude oil dropped. The yield on US Treasury notes fell. And this chaos lasted all of about 5 minutes, in which our corporate communications department was aggressively tweeting that we had been hacked. Please, please, please don't believe what you just saw. And then the markets realized what had happened, and everything went back to normal, and it recovered. But all of this in response to a fake tweet. And of course, the question is why? And it's because people believe the AP. That's a trust that we've earned over 167 years of getting it right a lot more often than we get it wrong. And there is a huge amount of content on social media in which, if you trace it back to its origin, there is an actual reporter doing what reporters have always done. Talking to contacts, doing research, crunching data. Sometimes, in many cases, they're putting themselves at great risk, both their lives and their freedom, in order to get that information. But even with 3,000 journalists around the world, yes, we're in a lot of places, but we can't be everywhere. And the beauty of user-generated content is that there are people creating content in all of those places where we're not. You can exponentially expand your news-gathering abilities through the smart use of UGC. But you have to know how to harness it, and you have to know how to curate it. And you have to know where it fits into your own values and into your identity as a news organization. For us at the AP, this means sticking to our editorial standards and ethical guidelines, even when we're dealing with UGC. For example, after a university student was horrifically gang raped on a bus in New Delhi, I'm sure all of you remember this story from December, there was a photograph that was purporting to be taken of the victim in the hospital after the attack and was widely circulated across social media. It was obviously fake. We know it was fake because we called her family and they told us it was fake. So we didn't use it, a lot of others did. Coverage of the Syrian civil war has also been plagued by fake images and video. This is partly because access to that country has been so difficult for foreign reporters that a lot of news organizations have relied on user-generated content as a way to fill in the gaps. The AP developed its verification process for confirming the authenticity of UGC, basically in response to the Syria issue. But it's now the same process that we're using for UGC all around the world. And it's interesting because this process really looks a lot like good old-fashioned reporting. It's like you're making a lot of phone calls, you're checking with sources, you're trying to get back to the question of, is this true or is it not true? So I regret that I'm using an example that Richard Porter from the BBC used this morning. So hopefully we can build on that and shed a little bit more light on it. But this is, of course, the video of a man allegedly being buried alive in Syria, which appeared on YouTube. It is pretty graphic. So I'm telling you in advance that it's not real to avoid anybody being overly upset about it. Oops. How do I go back? How do I play? Oh, they play. Okay, go ahead.
ومعاه كان كاميرا ما يصور فيها ما تصور فيها يا حيوان ما تبعت على الجزيرة وعلى العربية وين هو يا سيدي ما يعطوك مصاري ولا حيوان سيدي هذا من القصير ولقيناها معاه هون وكان واقف عم يصور الأمن من القصير يا حيوان من القصير هالكلب هذا بعدوا لي هيك عليه لهالحيوان هذا من القصير يا حيوان تمروا لك شوف تمروا لهالحيوان قل لا إله إلا بشر ولا حيوان مروا لها الحيوان مروا
So it's certainly a compelling video, and it certainly looks like a man being buried alive. But when we put this through our verification process, as the BBC did, it failed. A native Arabic speaker who listened to the voices of the regime soldiers here, the buriers are allegedly government troops, concluded that the voices sounded very stilted and unnatural. And there were some other things about it that were weird, including the way that the video itself had been uploaded. But for us, the most obvious red flag was this. Our Beirut bureau was able to get in touch with people in the village where this man allegedly had come from. And they found out that there was no one in that village that was missing or unaccounted for. So we didn't use the video. But again, that's reporting, right? It's what we've always done. So this is a time-consuming process. Someone asked the question earlier, how do you balance the need to verify against the need to be first? Well, I think all of us, when we become journalists, we're told that you need to be right and you need to be first in that order. And that's never been more true than it is now. So we go to great lengths to verify these images because, again, our reputation as a source for accurate and reliable information is at stake every single day. So I want to close with this one because I don't think any story about verifying the authenticity of images would be complete without a discussion of the North Korean state media. So this is an absolute minefield of fakery, sometimes sophisticated, sometimes very much not so. Sometimes the manipulation of photos is done for no apparent reason. I can remember one example in which an aerial shot of Kim Jong-il's funeral procession had a TV crew in one corner, and for some reason they put out a version in which the TV crew had been photoshopped out. I don't know why. Of course, we all know that doesn't mean every single piece of false information on North Korea is coming from that side of the DMZ, but I digress. Anyway, this one on the screen is a KCNA photo that was distributed a few months ago, and a few of these hovercraft type things are probably real, but if you look closely at the spray coming out, some of them look exactly the same, which is because they've been cloned using Photoshop and repeated over and over again. I guess they did this because they wanted to intimidate the rest of the world with the amazing number of hovercrafts that they have. But one of our AP photo editors in Tokyo spotted this, saw that it was an obvious fake for that reason, and made sure it didn't get out. So I'm hoping what you take away from all of this is that across all of the AP's platforms, from print to TV to Twitter to everything in between, the AP has made a lot of changes, and there are a lot of things about our report, whether it's our broadcast services, our text report, our photos that look different. But the one thing that hasn't changed is if you see the AP reporting something, you can be very sure that we are very confident that what we're reporting is true and authentic, and that has not changed. It doesn't mean we're right 100% of the time. Obviously, no one is, but that is our goal. And we want to make sure that 10, 20, or 167 years from now, that people still believe the AP. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. I have to say, I want to thank ABU for a variety of reasons, most of all because I've been having a blast here for the past 24 hours. As is the case, I think, with conferences where you come and you talk to people who are not the big organizations, you realize how the most inspiring stories from the front line of the digital revolution are by people like Thai PBS. We had a conversation last night, myself and Somchai, talking about the idea of giving cameras to farmers in southern Thailand to tell a story about their lives. And that kind of person, and I know this from a rural society like Ireland, you know, those people were ignored by their local governments for generations, but now they have the capacity to take a camera under the tutelage of journalists and tell a story direct to people. And I think that is what this revolution is all about. Don't ever forget, we're living through a golden age. Inspiration is what this revolution is about as much as anything else. I also think, listening to Brian's presentation about how people together doing things like stopping stories. I mean, it's so counterintuitive to journalists. We always want to be the first one to tell people something. Well, there's now a whole generation of journalists growing up knowing that it's sometimes good to stop a story, to say no. And I think that in itself is also inspiring. But I do have to say to you, I stand here troubled to an extent by the debate we're having, not necessarily just here, but I think just generally about these phrases that we've been bandying about, the words collaboration, innovation, media 3.0. I don't know what that means. I think it's just media. Citizen journalism, I'm not quite sure what that means. I think it's just journalism. And I think essentially part of the problem with these debates is that we ask ourselves to come up with a solution to a digital revolution. How do we win it? The answer is we don't know. If we knew, we'd all be sharing this secret with you right now, but we don't know. There is no single answer to this digital revolution. When you think you've found an answer to the digital revolution, how to win it, I guarantee you, you're wrong, or else you will be very soon wrong, because some 15-year-old kid in Singapore or San Jose is going to invent a new platform that you're going to have to master all over again. The key here is this is revolution. It's not evolution. It's not like shifting from tape editing to FTP. It's not that. It's not a shift. It's not a disruption. It's not a change. It's a revolution. And I say that because my whole life, I've been dedicated to public service broadcasting. I worked for RTE, the Irish TV station. For 20 years, I knew nothing but journalism in the public interest. And I think what happened to me, and I'll tell you a story rather than giving you a presentation, because I think my story in some ways personifies, not just about my company, what has changed and what this revolution is all about. I'm talking about just my experience of being on the front line of this digital revolution. This was me back in the day. This is not too long ago. This is 2005. This was me in Esfahan. I was a foreign correspondent. When there was a war, a natural disaster, a political crisis, or a fascinating story like Iran, I think every journalist like me has one place that just gets under the skin. Iran was that place. I just loved going there. As you see, back in the day, and that's only 2005, we owned the means of production. You had to have a TV camera that size and a satellite link to send back the pictures and a 3-person crew and all kinds of transportation. We owned the means of production of journalism. We also owned the means of distribution of journalism. So if you wanted to hear about a story like Iran as a consumer, you had to sit at an appointed time, watch your television, and we would tell you as you consumed passively. And then something happened. And it was 2009. And suddenly, everything shifted in almost an instant. This was Iran in June 2009, where there was protests against a disputed election. And it was not the foreign correspondent with the big camera who was telling the story. It was young people, young men, young women, with camera phones connected to social networks that were telling that story. And suddenly, before we knew it, the means of production had gone out of our hands. The means of distribution had gone out of our hands. Everybody could tell a story. If they had a camera phone, were connected to a network, they could distribute it through Twitter and YouTube and Facebook and Weibo and Youku and all the different platforms we have. That's the meaning of this revolution. We as journalists have gone from being the people who had the monopoly, the gatekeepers, as short a time as 2005, to today being the people who have to be the managers of this overabundance of content produced by the people that used to be called our audience. And so now, when you have a story like Boston, the Boston bombing, quite clearly all of us are, this candid shot from a broadcaster around the time. We as journalists are listening to what our audience are saying when a big story breaks. And so that's the revolution. And it's frightening, quite clearly, but it's also inspiring, as I said. And I think what we've got to do is, instead of trying to argue about the nature of the revolution or who can win it, let's just stop for a minute and think what challenges we have to solve. So when I sort of set up Storyful 3 years ago, this was the statistic. There was 24 hours of video uploaded every single minute on YouTube. That was 2010. And I used to give presentations and it would change. It went to 60. As we heard from Jed Simmons this morning, it's now at 100 hours every single minute, a little more than an hour a second, as Jed said this morning. And how, in all of that noise, do you find the authentic voice, the person who really does have the defining piece of content on a major story like Boston, on the tsunami or an earthquake or a tornado? How do you find it? That's the first problem. How do you discover the news in the noise? Of course, the second problem is, how do you trust that person once you've found them? Because you know what? The New York Times may not have a person on the scene. It may be a 14-year-old kid with a camera phone. So how do you find out if that person, that child with a phone, is telling you something that's actually true? So it's those two problems: discovery, verification. And then obviously this third problem is delivery to your audience in a way that's engaging. And so I thought, back in 2009, there was no organization doing this at scale, helping other news organizations discover, verify, and deliver the most valuable content on the social web. So I thought, why not set a company up myself? So I did, and it wasn't easy. It was Ireland, 2009, the middle of the biggest economic crisis in our economic history, and I had to go looking for €1 million from skeptics to create a market that didn't exist. But I think what I realized was I wasn't trying to build a company. I was trying to build a new culture. And the culture was summed up by what's on the back of our business cards. This was our mission statement. We just wanted to tell stories. It wasn't about content, data. It was about stories, because that's what we all are, storytellers. And I realized that as well as the philosophy and the existential vision behind Storyful, we had to build a physical newsroom. And we had to invent new workflows to solve the questions that were arising. And thankfully, 3 years on, after being founded, we are now headquartered in Ireland. We have 30 staff in Ireland, which is our headquarters, in Asia, in Hong Kong, and also in the United States. And we have basically support for client lists all over the world. This is what we do. We essentially provide a breaking news wire, a news service similar to an existing news agency. We also customize our service, provide training, consultancy. We do custom projects for big brands from Skype to YouTube to Google to Yahoo. And finally, we in recent past, in the cooperation of YouTube, have begun trying to build an ethical business model for user-generated content. I'll give you an example from last Saturday. I think you may have all seen this video. A boulder falls down a hillside in Taiwan, and that very lucky motorist escapes with their lives by the skin of their teeth. This was loaded by a Taiwanese YouTube user. We found that at 300 views. It's now at 7 million views in 6 days. And thanks to the encouragement and support of YouTube, we are now helping people like that make money out of their video, get the credit they deserve, and give you, the broadcasters, the ability to safely use that kind of video, knowing that you know the original uploader, you're doing right by them, and you're not breaking any laws of copyright or any other legal frameworks in your own country. So that's what we've been doing. I think we, at this stage now, have become a global organization. These are our clients in Europe, including the European Broadcasting Union. Our clients in North America are some of the top brand names in the news business, and Asia, Middle East and Africa are areas where we are now starting to work very closely with some of the biggest broadcasters and social platforms. But again, I want to tell you a story, not necessarily give you a pitch, because just want to establish that we have lived this revolution for the past 3 years. And here are some of the lessons that I've learned. And the first one is that technology is absolutely essential. We all have to kind of act and think a little bit like a tech startup. We have to be innovating and failing sometimes, because that's the key to innovation. You've got to make a mistake, learn from it, do it again. Doesn't come naturally to us as journalists. Problem is this, that technology is absolutely not enough. We've heard this, I think, from our speakers today, that there has to be a change in culture. And so, for example, at Storyful, we have developed algorithms, machines that monitor conversations on all different platforms and send our journalists alerts when we know something is happening. We follow 1,000 journalists and sources and experts, let's say, in Korea, and suddenly we noticed that there's 500 messages flying around in that group of people. We get an alert. A spike in conversation means breaking news. So this kind of technology is helping us be ahead, find those videos at 300 views. But that's not enough. And that's what we've been talking about all day, isn't it? Verification. And so we know that technology can also help with verification. We verify 1,000 videos a month with 30 staff, partly because we know we can use technology, a lot of it open to the world, Google Earth, Google Maps, they're our friends. Very simple inspection of shadows, knowing exactly where this location is, checking other reports. These are all the things we did as journalists. We can all do it, but here's the problem. I don't think we can do it effectively if we all try to build our own siloed verification units. Something has to be different. And what I think is different, we have started an experiment which we call Open Newsroom on Google+. So as well as all the technology we use, we've now asked a group of journalists who have a particular interest in areas like Syria, Russia, Egypt, to come and join us and in public view try to verify. And some of those people, and this is basically some of the people we've got with us, are extremely experienced social journalists like Anthony DeRosa, who works for Circa, Ayman Mohideen, which used to be with Al Jazeera. These are people who have come to us and said, can you find somebody to help me verify this video? They're not afraid to share this question in public. And that's been the secret of the success. And if I just ask to play that video, which is the still I showed you a moment ago. This is a video from the protests in Egypt several weeks ago. And if we just play the video, it's one of those iconic pieces of content that I think will live on after we've forgotten about the story. Let's fire ahead. Watch the man in the white. And I think we've just seen what happened. We've just seen that verification is not about technology. It's not about a static freeze frame. It's about a very disturbing set of images. It's about a story. It's about the story of that man, the place he was in, the reason he was there, the people that were surrounding him. Why would he stand in front of a tank and why would they shoot him? And so again, what we did there was we went back to our social newsroom and we basically asked people there to tell us, did they know where this was? Could we work together? And very soon, before we knew it, we had 20, 30 people who were journalists, experts, activists, joining together, geolocating exactly where that happened, what time of day, who was the person. And suddenly, before we knew it, we had this co-op. And I'm very struck by the AP, because the AP was founded back in the Spanish-American War of the 1840s, and all the New York papers couldn't cover this event, so they all got together and created a co-op. And I kind of think this open newsroom is the new form of cooperative journalism. And in a case like this, we were able to tell our clients and our partners, this is the story. It's not just verifying content, this is the story. It happened again, obviously, very recently, where we had, about 2:30 in the morning, on August 21st, we got these words, toxic substances, popped up in our alert system. Shortly afterwards, we have these dramatic images. Shortly afterwards, the first video of what was at the time an alleged chemical attack in Syria, something that has now sparked, I think, an historical moment for us. And again, the open newsroom came together. And it got to the point where within about 2 hours, we could build a map with all of the details we needed to tell the story. The location of the videos, important details that have been corroborated by other reporters, other activists. And suddenly we had a map giving us a three-dimensional vision of a story that was unfolding. As politicians made statements, we could evaluate them. People said the timestamps on the videos predated the actual event. Well, in fact, it just so happens on YouTube certain timestamps are California time. They're not local time. So it's these kinds of things that we're able to do with the help of an activist crowd. And I say activist, but that includes journalists as well. So my conclusion here is that it's not about technology. It's about culture. And this is where the revolution gets really difficult. Because we're going to have to act against our own best interests sometimes. We're going to have to forget about being first. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have a scoop, because good journalists digging get scoops and they should be able to stand up and say, I got it first. But I'm talking about when breaking news happens. If you think you can be first in the age of social media, I'm telling you right now, you'll be wrong more often than you'll be right. And you will be embarrassed and your reputation will suffer. I think chasing a scoop on a breaking news story is pretty pointless at this stage. I think the only way that you can actually be ahead of the game is if you get the right people in the crowd to help you do it, and do it openly. So for example, with the video that's been shown by I think twice now today, the Buried Alive video, I remember that day. I remember Andy Carvin, from NPR getting on Twitter and asking, does anyone know what's going on with this video? And I remember Malachy Brown, our Storyful news editor in Dublin, going, I don't know, let's check it out. And I remember Trushar Bharat from the UGC unit, the BBC in London, offering an incredibly important piece of information. And a journalist, Julian Pan from France 24 in Paris, setting up an audio comparison, showing us that the audio is actually faked. The man screaming in the background is actually faked. And there was 4 journalists from different organizations in the space of about 2 hours coming together to do something which now, I suppose, after today, is the most quoted example of verification. Key is, it happened in collaboration, not in competition. You cannot own breaking news in the age of social media. All you can do is find the right people to work with, listen to, and I think it may be a 14-year-old kid to begin with. But in the end of the day, I would say the value, and I agree completely with everyone spoken already, the value of journalism, ironically, in this chaotic age, has increased. And that's why I just leave you with this. You know, we have been covered doing the open newsroom by a lot of people who find it very inspiring. One thing I just draw your attention to is this notion that what we're trying to do is stop thinking of a newsroom as a specific place and start thinking of it as an open process. And I know what you're going to say to me. You're going to say to me, well, that's very nice, but where's the money, right? So what's the point in creating this fantastic nirvana type of journalism where we all get together and sing Kumbaya and verify and discover all together, and companies like Storyful will help you out? No, we're a business. We're a sustainable business. And I got into this so I could build a sustainable, ethical business model for journalism in this revolutionary time. And so here's what I'd say to you. Don't think about the money. Just think about the value. Value in an age where content is almost like water, right? No value, really, is it? It drops from the skies, it's in the lakes, it's in the reservoir, we turn on the tap and it's there. If you've got 100 hours of video every minute on YouTube, your content has no value to begin with. None, right? So try to privatize it, keep it private. I don't think that works, really, but think about what happened with water about 20 years ago. When suddenly someone said, I'm going to sell you a bottle of water, we all went, that's crazy. But what happened there was that people realized that the actual content of that bottle itself is not the thing, it's what's done to it. It's purified, it's made mobile. It's handed to somebody in a way that they can just use it the way they want to use it. And I think that's the analogy that I would use about the new business model for the journalism that I am evangelizing here today. Think about what you as a journalist can do with this massive amount of content to turn it into a story. Use your skills, the trust that's given to you, the authenticity that is given to you by your audience to make it better, to offer the context, to turn this raw data into stories that matter and that can change the world. And that's, I think, where our business model will go. If we can find ways to make the content relevant, not to the existing audience. My daughter's 8 years old. She doesn't walk out the door without her iPad. For her, the iPad is like a limb, right? Your kids are the same way. She doesn't think about the things I think about. I marvel at the technology behind the Apple computer system. She just thinks about it as a fact of life. And you've got to think in her mind, how will she want to use news? How will she want to consume it? She will believe in the value of journalism because she wants someone to trust. We still want someone to trust, and that's
Mark.
still us. Thank you.
We're about to
Continue the
wrap it up.
conversation.
Thank you, Mark, for a very interesting presentation on Storyful. We don't have much time for debate. Still, I would like to open the floor to any questions that you may have. While you think about your questions, I would like to go over to Brian. Brian, you said something that troubled us, or at least troubled me a lot. Your Twitter account was hacked. There is a real risk that many of our websites, many of our Twitter and Facebook accounts are hacked. How do we work to prevent this from happening? And if it happens, what's the right thing to do?
Well, I think vigilance is the main way to prevent it from happening. I'm not sure total outright prevention is even possible. But in the one sort of high-profile instance in which the AP's Twitter account was hacked, what we did was we mobilized an army of AP people around the world to make it clear to all of their followers that what had gone out on the AP's flagship account, because remember, we all have a company Twitter account but then everybody who works for us probably has their own Twitter account. And so part of the solution for minimizing the damage from that was to mobilize our other assets. We have, other, lifestyles and AP Sports all have Twitter handles. And so we just mobilized all of our assets. So it doesn't necessarily answer your question on how you stop the hack from happening, but it was a fairly effective way to minimize the damage quickly. But it didn't stop the Dow Jones from going 150 points down.
I see one question there in the Twitter feed for ASBU. In the case of the conflict in Syria, how does your news exchange remains neutral among all the conflicting information that comes over from Syria?
Neutral is a very big word for us because the concept of news differs from a region to a region. As a union, as I said, we are to abide by some regulations because we are working within certain organizations, and we are a union of state-owned TV stations. It means that somewhere there is a kind of authority, political authority on all the items exchanged. But the thing is, as central coordinators, we tried, we saw it very interesting that with the wave of changes we are all living, it's a good opportunity for us to adapt the situation without necessarily referring to these authorities. I mean, for first time in the history of exchanges, we happened to see offers from TV stations dealing with opposition message. It might be something normal for Western TV countries, but for ASBU, it is not. It was something very particular. I can also tell you that, for instance, the decision taken by the Arab League to suspend Syria from all activities couldn't have any echo within the exchanges because we kept on giving Syrian TV the opportunity to still give us the contributions. And most of the, as I said yesterday during my presentations, most of the coverage of these events, at least from the Syrian official point of view, have been transiting via ASBU.
Thank you. Somchai, one question about citizen journalists. How do you select them? And in that process, how are they trained?
In our organization, we got a team of people called Civil Society Department. When these people working with a lot of local civil society. And then we announced that we're going to train local journalists, local people who become citizen journalists. So we just go through the process of open application and go through all the application and select a team of about 10 or 15 participants with the help of our own well-trained journalists. Sometimes we got help from outside organization to help funding this training because our own resources budget is quite tight. So this extra activity has been coordinated with people from outside, with our own team, and then with the people, local community. There are lots of civil society up and down the country who are now eager to send their members to be trained to become a citizen journalist. But as I mentioned before, we got an army of about more than 2,000 trained as a citizen journalist, but not all of them could get all their story on air. In a week, we got perhaps a couple of dozens video coming in, but we have to send back and forth before we quite sure that we can run the story.
But that's because of lack of quality on the work they have done, or is it because there are issues about how reliable the story they are telling is, if the story is reliable or not?
Yeah, it's a mixture. Sometimes the picture is not broadcastable, or the audio quality is not enough. And sometimes the way our villagers tell a story is not really what you call consistent. So a lot of issues coming up during this kind of training. We have a team of editors who have a look at all the material coming in and select. Maybe we have to send back and then make a phone call. You need to fill in a little bit more information. You have to change the way you tell the story, or the audio one bit of the audio is not good enough. You need to re-record again. So it's a process. It's quite hard work to get all these people working for us.
Mark, there is a question there on the Twitter feed. How can we, as news consumers, make sure Storyful is reliable?
Take my word for it, would probably be the wrong message. I think what you can do is test it. So I would say come on to Google+, find Open Newsroom and just see what we're doing there in Open Vision. One of the things that we have advantage over, I suppose, existing news organizations is that we don't mind saying we don't know. And so therefore you will see us in real time and you'll watch these entries grow and grow and grow and you'll see the way that we behave. We are professional journalists. We have people drawn from organizations like CNN all the way to Yonhap, to newspapers. Generally the best people who work for Storyful are the pedantic sub-editors who will give you, a kick if you put the punctuation mark in the wrong place, and I love those people. They're doing God's work in this age. And so therefore I think you have to observe. Come and look. Follow us at Storyful Pro is where we give our breaking news alerts. I'm Mark Little, at Mark Little, and use Twitter. Come and take part. Have a conversation. Don't buy it, don't believe it until you've tested it. And I think that probably goes for everything to do with social media and this digital revolution.
Any questions from the floor at this moment? Yes. Question over there, please. Third row, yes.
Again, is there conflict between professionalism and citizen journalist and media ethic?
Can I clear one thing up, yes. I think? We talk about citizen journalists and professionals as if there's this binary choice between the two. There's actually a whole group, I think, a very wide spectrum of people that are actively producing content. They start obviously with the professional news organizations. There's then a group of people that you might call citizen journalists, who are the people that are obviously liberated and leveraged by Thai PBS. Some of them are activists, some of them are NGOs. They fall into that category. But 95% is probably an underestimate of people who produce the kind of narrative-changing content will only ever produce one thing in their entire lives of universal relevance. They're not trained to be, media activists or they're not trained to be media savvy. So I just think we should not apply blanket terms. I think the word journalist has a very defined meaning, but there is, I think, a broader range of things people are doing on UGC that needs to be defined.
We do have, in this kind of user-generated content, basically two groups of people. Those who happen to be there and they shot something interesting, and those who are somewhere to shoot something interesting.
I would give an example to just maybe use case of this. I was sent to places where I would essentially be on a live shot within 25 minutes of leaving the airport to be asked about a situation, whether it be Palestine, whether it be Iran, Afghanistan. And the fixer that I worked with at that point in time was probably better educated, knew the language, knew the background, but they never were the ones who did the reports. Today, they are the ones picking up the cameras and telling the stories. So I think this is one of the great things that's happening. And the distinction between professional and amateur, I think, is a very blunt way of describing the distinction. I think the key thing is that we all have to share the currency of this new media, which is authenticity. And that's the word.
Yeah, I would agree with everything Mark said. I think the gentleman in the last session asked the question as, who sets the agenda, the user or the journalist? And I would say we all have a lot of different pieces of information we access in deciding who sets the agenda, but news organizations have always relied on public interest, and audience interest is one of those key factors. And when have you ever had better real-time feedback from the public about what they care about than you have now with social media? So it's foolish not to factor that into your agenda setting.
Any more questions? Yes, go ahead. First row, please.
Hi, I'm Take from NHK Tokyo. Just my question is, in order to win the digital revolution, what do you think is the role of traditional broadcaster? This morning, Richard from BBC said that it's not about the content, it's about the relationship. In Tokyo, I was told that NHK cannot survive as a content provider. NHK can only survive as a solution provider or a service provider. Do you have any comment or any reply?
Question is for?
The question is again, how in order to win the digital revolution, how traditional broadcaster is just content provider, only fact provider, or anything else?
I mean, I think part of the problem we're having is that we're all obsessed with platforms and apps, you know? So can I get the right app onto the iPad or the tablet? It's just ridiculous for me. I think the notion of having traditional broadcasters versus newspapers versus radio stations versus social platforms, I mean, that's disappearing. You know, we're journalists. And in the end of the day, I think that the value that will maintain itself will be the trust and the authenticity that you build up as a trusted voice, particularly a public service broadcaster. There's never been a bigger need for public interest journalism. But I think we mistake the fact that we're already on television and that's the way it's going to stay. We can't ask people to turn up at 9 o'clock every evening and watch us. So get rid of that first, get rid of our obsession with the platform people consume us on, and just remember where the value is. And that's in the trust that we've built up over generations. And, you know, by the fact that we've all talked today about keeping the value alive.
And it's the value you add on top of the raw content itself. It's all the things we've been talking about: expertise, analysis, you know, judgment, curation, all of these things that journalists are in a unique position to do.
Thank you, please.
Hi, I have a question for you. I'm Hannah Storm from INSEE, the International News Safety Institute. How, in a world where we're increasingly reliant on social media, do we guarantee the safety of those people who provide us that news?
A tough question. Maybe someone managing a news agency could tell us something about that.
It's an excellent question, and I think it's a question that news organizations are just starting to begin to ask, because this is such a new form of information gathering. You know, I think it's a great discussion to have. I think a lot of newsrooms are starting to have that discussion. I don't have any specific anecdotes or experiences in which a person that we in Asia acquired UGC from was in a difficult situation or an unsafe situation, but I would hope that in the same way that we would protect journalists who are working for the AP in some capacity and providing content for the AP in some capacity, we would apply the same. Providing content for the AP in some capacity, we would apply the same. I can stop talking now, I guess.
Someone is
anyway,
retweeting.
You knew where I was going.
But I would like to ask comments also from Somchai. Do you have citizen journalists working in the south of Thailand, where there is a conflict between the Buddhist community and the Muslim community?
Yeah, we have a regular spot from our citizen journalists working in the south, but mainly not to cover the big event like what happened where the bomb went off, and then you know, the citizen journalists work on more a local level on how people suffering from the conflict, and looking from the point of view of the victims more than just cover what happening.
But in the training you give them, do you tell them that they should be careful in certain situations and they should not go there for the story all out without taking precautions? Do you take that kind of precaution?
Yeah, absolutely. Not just in southern Thailand, many other area in Thailand where there's a conflict, local politician conflict or a big corruption scandal. The local citizen journalists know what's happening, what's going on in their community, but we prevent them from reporting the scandal because they are too close to those people, those powerful people in the area. So they give us all the information and tip off, and we send in our professional journalists from outside so that to save them. So this is what we are doing with get more story out of the area where you don't risk your member of your staff. In southern Thailand, always that a well-trained journalist will have a protection, but in the area where citizen journalists, we are not going to allow them to do too much into conflict reporting. We do general what's going on, what's impact on their life, that the situation is going on like that. So this is what we're trying to do, is to put a different perspective of the violence in the South,
Very well.
looking from the inside out.
Another question over there, please.
Ali Mubarak from Egypt. If someone or an institution provided me with a breaking news and he wanted the prize, am I ought to give him the prize, money? Thanks.
Does AP, for instance, pay for content?
Not generally, under occasional special circumstances. I think that every news organization's got its own standards. We generally don't pay for interviews or for content. You know, there are rare occasions in which there's no other way to get it. But I think that it varies very much from news organization to news organization. We all have our own policies for that.
I would say that there's a very big distinction between the kind of content that is about a breaking news story that might be about death, destruction, a school shooting, a terrible tragedy, where I would say our obligation is to do as much as we possibly can not to make that a monetary commodity, that we should treat it like a public utility. And I think that's what our philosophy is. We try clear things first, that is talk to the uploader and say, can people use this? And we try prevent restriction. There is a point where you have, you know, the funny video, the and finally video, which I think is underestimated by all of us here because it's what pays our bills many times. That's where people can make money, and it's very important that we give them the capacity to share in the revenues that we make off that video. That's what I mean when I say an ethical business model. So I think we are seeing a new type of content licensing, content rights management. I think YouTube is championing this in a way that's very inspiring. If you don't already have a YouTube channel, get one. The people dominating YouTube right now, news, are people like Russia Today. They're not, you know, the bigger news organizations who outlay huge amounts of money. I think it's an area where you can actually make money in the future, and I think it will be a place that will have a very ethical business model develop as well.
Thank you. A very short question because we are reaching our time.
I'm Prakash Chankarki from Nepal Television. So I want to know, since everybody can become reporter with the new devices in this digital age, do you think that, especially for verification, do you think that there would be the content that may be diverted with the immaturity of the reporter, and it may create problem for the verification of the content itself when you bring it to the social media?
Can I make the distinction between Twitter's not a publication, you know, YouTube's not a television station. That's very important to recognize. They're sources, they're carriers, they're platforms in which things happen. We as journalists need to sit above that, and we need to say to ourselves, if that, you know, young person who has a motivation and wants to push a political point of view puts a video out there, it doesn't mean they're not a good source. They may be the most authentic source. And we as journalists, I think, there has to be a new class of journalists, like the eye in the sky, that's watching out for this stuff, and then applying the things we've always been good at: context, narrative, storytelling. So yeah, treat that with caution, but don't, I think, have a false idea that everything you see on Twitter is a publication. It's not. It's a conversation. You're listening in, just the way you did when you walked into a cafe to talk to the person who'd witnessed the bank robbery. You know, it's just like that. So don't judge people because they're not politicians, police people or journalists. If they're close to the story, authenticity is the key. Your job then is to tell the story that emerges from that.
Quick roundup, 20 seconds for each. We start on this side.
Thank you. I think it's the matter deals with the users. It's like a razor with two edges, whether you have to use it the wrong way or the right way. Mainly when some of our colleagues talking about ethics. Ethics are very important in connection with the usage, because in Muslim countries, for instance, you can imagine talking about some topics like gay marriage and because it is like that and that's all. So it's a razor with two edges. Please be careful.
Brian?
I guess what I would say is in the digital revolution, the role of journalists and of news organizations isn't going away. It's changing, and it's changing in a lot of different ways. And UGC is one of the ways in which it's changing, but it's not the entire answer. And it's complicated.
Mark, your 20 seconds.
I'm an Irish guy, so I'm going to quote a poet. Samuel Beckett once said, "Ever tried, ever failed, no matter. Try again, fail better. Experimentation is the key to winning the digital revolution. Try, fail, learn, do it better."
Finally, Somchai.
In terms of deploying the citizen journalists, it's always a danger of what we call advocacy journalism. And it's now up to the editorial judgment of the people at Thai PBS to improve the story. We did make some mistake in the past. We improve on that what we have done before, and then we keep improving.
Thank you so much. Please join me in a round of applause for our 4 panelists. And thank you for keeping this session alive. And it was a pleasure to be here at the first edition of the Global News Forum. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pinto. As you might already have known me, I'm Kenny Bae. I work at the Global News Forum Secretariat. And I would like to express a sincere appreciation for your active participation for this forum, which made this conference very successful. Well, I believe that this forum is a great platform for us as media people to gather, to share knowledge and experience and future vision. It would be regrettable if this forum is a one-time event. However, I can assure you this event will be continued. Well, do we have the colleagues from NHK, from Japan? Yeah, could you please stand up? I'm very happy to announce that our colleagues from NHK confirmed that they will host their next Global News Forum in Japan 2015. Let us give them a big round of applause for your dedication and contribution. Thank you very much. Well, the Global News Forum here in Seoul 2013 now has come to an end. I would like to express my sincere appreciation for all the moderators and the speakers for your contribution for this forum. Thank you very much. Well, I also would like to express my special thanks to who's working for this forum, but not shown here, but behind us, our interpreters, camera crew, and the technicians, and all the volunteers. Why don't you give a big round of applause? Thank you very much. Lastly, I would like to wrap up this forum by saying, see you in Japan. Thank you very much.
Well, you heard it here first from Kenny Bae, Global News Forum 2015. Hope to see you there. For now, that wraps up the sessions for Global News Forum 2013. Thanks for all your active participation. We will now follow up with a cocktail reception. That will be on the second floor in the lobby of the Sequoia Room. Just 1 second, though, we've got an important announcement. Times have changed for the shuttle bus tomorrow morning. Any of you who are taking the excursion tomorrow morning, your shuttle bus will depart from the Lexington Hotel at 9:20. Make a note of that, at 9:20. 9:30, departing from Conrad Hotel. Also, before the KBS and in-session people run out of here, please come forward and have a picture at the end. Come over here and have a picture at the end. And that does it for now. The reception will be hosted downstairs, second floor, Sequoia Room, starting 6:30. Up until that point, we have the cocktail reception. Thank you so much to our panelists, to our moderator, and thanks to all of you for taking part. That does it. Thank you.